Hello, Guardians. Welcome back to Tower Casuals, the Destiny podcast. I am one of your hosts, Corey Deering, and alongside me, as always, is the Jotun Toten, the Vault Dwelling, the Duality Dungeon Diving disciple himself, Josh Finney.
Oh, Corey.
Hi,
Josh.
Josh.
Week. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year, but it's been an absolute week. By this time next week, I'll probably look like I just want to die. But
no, you'll be fine.
Today felt like a whole week, like compressed into like an not even 8 hours. Like, well, yeah, I guess like an 8-hour span. Like, you know, I woke up to all that great Xbox news this morning.
Yeah, I saw that.
The Last of Us trailer leaks.
Yeah.
Summer Game
you mean
Fest
like
happens.
just the $70 version of The Last of Us?
God, yeah,
the PS4
I'm
version
going to go in
$10.
on that. I am going to briefly go in on that in a second. Yeah, we had Day of the Devs, we had Summer Game Fest, we had the Devolver Showcase. It's been a great but extremely busy day.
Ninja Turtles coming to Game Pass.
Ninja Turtles, you didn't believe me? Ninja Turtles is coming to Game Pass.
I did not believe you for
I did a
like
double
the first
take
5
when
seconds.
it happened. I actually had to rewind the live video and was like, what the hell is this? That just kind of got snuck on in there, and that is a game that comes out on the 16th.
Mm-hmm,
The 16th is quickly turning into a busy day.
Yes, it
You got
is.
that, you got Fall Guys, we've got Cuphead DLC at the end of the month, we've got the Outriders expansion at the end of the month.
Ooh, Outriders, yeah!
It's rapidly... You and Austin are the two people I know who are like all in on this, and I just don't know if I can bring myself to pay for it.
I love Outriders.
I'm hoping for like a secret appearance of it on Sunday afternoon because the first game came to Game Pass. I'm hoping they'll just be like, fuck it, we'll put the sequel on there too.
It's not a sequel, it's an expansion.
Whatever, expansion, whatever. Listen, if Bungie can do it with Beyond Light,
though.
if they can do it with Beyond Light, then I feel like People Can Fly can do it with Outriders. It would get people back into that game.
It's a $40 expansion too. Gross.
Yeah, I mean that's par for the course with Destiny expansions. I feel, and you know, World of Warcraft and things like that.
I know. It's just sometimes when I see, $40.
The sticker shock right now with how everything is. I was talking with our friend Austin about this earlier. We both just kind of came to the conclusion we haven't really bought a whole lot of games this year that aren't just straight up on Game Pass or on like the new PS Plus tiers that are coming out. That comes on Monday.
Right.
Yeah, I was laughing thinking about it. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I've bought in a couple games that were on sale this year, but I haven't I don't think I've made a full $60 purchase this year.
That all stemmed from our reactions to the leak of The Last of Us price. $70 for The Last of Us remake.
I know, gross.
I've got a problem with this, okay? I kind of went off on a rant when this got leaked by Jason Schreier last year. Bloomberg reported on this end of March, beginning of April last year, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's fake. That's not real." That's when we found out about how
no, because Sony Bend was supposedly working on it, and they didn't want to do it.
It started out as an internal project from their support teams, and then it got moved to Bend, and then Naughty Dog was like, "Fuck no, Bend isn't taking this. We're taking it." $70 for a remake of a game that's not even a decade old. This is not a Resident Evil 2 situation. This isn't even a Resident Evil 4 situation. This is a game that is, because Resident Evil 4 will be old enough to vote by the time that it comes out. It will be 18 next year when the remake comes out. Like, and they're remaking the game. They're changing some story beats in that to make it more streamlined. Everything else, like this, seems to look prettier, and I think it has Last of Us 2's combat, which from everything I hear is actually a really good change, because that was probably my biggest gripe about the original was the combat. But like, I want to see the game actually running and not just the pre-rendered like cutscenes that we saw today. I am still, regardless, this could look like the greatest fucking thing ever made. I'm still not paying $70 to buy this game a third time. I'm simply not doing it. This to me would have been the perfect game to say it's coming out for $70. They did confirm it's coming to PC at the same time. But to also say, hey, at the same time, we're going to give you the PS5 upgrades for The Last of Us Part 2 we're going to give you, and we're going to package it in with the PS Plus tiers. It's going to be part of the Platinum subscription for that month. That's going to be the new game that we add to the Platinum tiers.
Right.
That would have been the perfect thing to add, and that's not me just saying like, oh, I don't want to pay $70 for it. No, that's me saying like, I have way better things to spend $70 on than a game that I've already beaten on 2 separate consoles. I don't need to play on it. The remaster version still looks pretty freaking good, man.
Yeah.
Like, I was seeing some Sony themselves, or I don't know if it was Sony, but it may have been IGN, released a whole bunch of side-by-side shots. It looks
they showed them on
the same.
They showed it during the Game Awards. I was like, which one's the remaster?
Tuned out. I totally tuned out at a certain point.
I was like, which one's the remaster?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, if it didn't have PS4 underneath one and PS5 under the other one, I don't know if I could have like.
We had some of the comparison shots this morning after the trailer leaked, and me and Austin were just genuinely sitting there going, which is which at certain times.
Yeah.
Like, there were a couple where it was really obvious, but there were a few where I felt like the PS4 version and I'm gonna say almost looked better.
Yeah.
In terms of like the lighting. And it just, I don't know. I don't see enough there for $70. I know that's a heretical statement. Our friend John is very excited for it. And you know what? Hey man, more power to you. I know he's excited. My buddy Aaron is excited for it. They love The Last of Us. I love the first game. I still have never played number 2. Due to having a digital console and not willing to drop full price money on games when they're fully digital, unless it's like Destiny. I could not get over that. I was like, this is egregious. This is an egregious price for this. I wouldn't mind if it had been $60 for like the remake, Factions 2, and like the PS5 version of The Last of Us Part 2, I would have just swallowed my pride and done it at that point. But Factions 2 is going to be a standalone game, which there are a few announcements that got me as uninterested as quickly as possible as saying, we decided we wanted Factions 2 to be a full-fledged experience.
I know.
Nope. Pass. Have you seen how 2023 looks yet, my guys? Q1 alone is going to break me.
Especially if that God of War delay is real.
Yeah, if the Ragnarok delay is real, Breath of the Wild 2, Lightfall, Starfield, Avowed, Redfall. Now, inevitably, some of these are getting pushed to summer and maybe even early fall. But still, if even 4 of those games make it out, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And Jedi Survivor? Like, I've had to have these discussions with friends already. Like, I will blow through Jedi Survivor and God of War and probably not even get to enjoy them solely so they don't get spoiled for me, so I can spend a ton of time in things like Starfield.
Right.
Like, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But, like, even more than that, Summer Game Fest was, like, the worst show today, by far. Day of the Devs was awesome. I liked every single game I saw there. I liked most of the Devolver games. It's just, I get where Jeff is coming from, and there's few people in the industry I would trust to put on an event as a solo individual like I do Jeff Keighley.
Yeah.
He's very well respected by just about everybody, but this wasn't it. I felt like it was a pretty bit. Last year I felt was a step forward for it. This year was a step back. This felt more like the 2020 show, which I hated.
Yeah.
This was pretty bad. When you spent, and it was clear they did not plan to spend as much time on The Last of Us as they ultimately ended up having to. We know there was supposed to be a trailer and some discussion about Replaced, one of the breakout indie games from last year's E3 season. And that, due to obvious reasons, it's a studio in Belarus, for those of you who don't know, which is right next door to Ukraine. It is a Russian puppet regime. Sad Cat Studios has made it really clear they are moving their team out of Belarus to Poland or to Finland, I believe, one of the two, so they can continue working on it. GSC has left Ukraine. They're the developers of Stalker. Both are supposed to be big games this year, big indie games for Xbox. Those are both on hold.
Stalker 2 is probably going to get pushed too.
Well, that is
because of the war.
No, Stalker 2 is 100%. That game is 2023 at the absolute earliest. I'd be shocked if either of these even comes out next year. Frankly, it's just there's more important things than video games. But
not according to the internet, Josh.
Not according to the internet, though. No. Man, I found myself falling asleep today, but I was super into Day of the Devs. I love Tim Schafer. Every one of those games looks legitimately fun. I'm here for him. But Corey,
I just want it noted that the highlight announcement for me today was Casey Jones coming in Ninja Turtles. So just gonna throw that out there. Best announcement for me of the day.
I saw that and immediately thought of you. You were not the only person who said that. There were at least 4 or 5 people in my timeline going, this is a legitimately awesome announcement between Casey Jones being in the game and it coming to Game Pass day one.
Well, the thing is like, and we're going to get to Destiny, I promise, guys. But like, my biggest thing was like, they announced Splinter. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Splinter would be cool. Where's Casey Jones? They announced April O'Neil as a playable character and not Casey Jones. I'm like, where's Casey Jones? Ever since they showed April O'Neil, I'm like, where's Casey Jones? Where the hell is Casey Jones? That's been my only ask for this game, and they answered and they delivered. Now all they have to do is deliver an amazing game with 6-player co-op. Oh my god, Game Pass party next weekend.
Yeah, six-player co-op, man. I was not going to play. It's been well documented. I am not a Ninja Turtles guy. Never watched it growing up. Never understood it. I will play this game, hearing that it has 6-player co-op. This is what I wanted Killer Queen Black to be. So yeah. I will play this. But Corey, this is a Destiny show. We talk about Destiny here.
We do.
We have some destinying to get to. We're gonna talk a lot about the story tonight. The story's taken quite a few turns in the last couple of weeks. We haven't had a huge opportunity to really cover it, so want to delve into the story aspects of it, what we've seen so far this season. Talk about that awesome cutscene this week. One of the most heart-wrenching things Bungie I think has ever made.
Yeah, what are you doing to me, Bungie? What are you doing?
Yeah,
to me?
What are you doing to me? Talk a little bit about the direction, maybe the rest of the season that we know. Do some lore corners and answer some questions. But first, we're going to dive into the TWAB. There's not a whole lot in here this week. There's not a lot in here
because there's other things I want to talk about.
There are other things that we want to talk about. So let's go ahead. Let's get this TWAB pulled up.
Let's do it.
Before we dive into the TWAB, though, while this is loading, my computer's taking forever, of course. I wanted to kind of touch on Iron Banner a little bit. I said last week I didn't really want to talk too much on it because I had not had a chance to dive into Iron Banner too much at that point. I'd gotten one solid night in and a couple matches in on Wednesday. I played probably about 50 or 60 more matches last week after that. It wasn't until the weekend that I started really hitting a lot of the bugs that people were having. The spark disappearing through the map. There were entire emote parties whenever that would happen on the map, which was really funny. Of course, you had the one asshole who always had to come in and kill everybody to get stats up. The sparks just didn't appear. You had to sit there and hang out until, if you had happened to be tied, you had to wait till the tiebreaker sparks came up. It wasn't bad. I got caught in the infinite respawn glitch twice. Thank God it was mercifully with like 15-20 seconds left on the clock both times. So it just ran out the clock doing that, and the match mercifully ended. I didn't have to quit out and miss out on my XP, but my XP counter was busted at one point. It was not counting progress on my Titan, which was really frustrating. Really? That's the one thing keeping me from that seal. I did do both my resets. Upon hearing that they were going to give me 600 XP per win, I grinded out those wins. I grinded out an awful lot of Iron Banner Rift, and I'm not completely unconvinced that should not just be the default setting for rep in this mode. Yeah.
No, I'm kind of with you there for sure. I experienced a lot of the same things you did, like no rift spawning or falling through the map or whatever. And like Mitch and I were just like, what's going on? And then on top of that, we were playing with my one friend who plays on PC. And of course, Mitch and I were the only 2 console players in the match, so we were just getting wrecked.
Oh yeah, you get absolutely steamrolled. I have that problem when we play with John. He's on Steam, and meanwhile everybody else in the party is on Xbox. I'm like, dude, you can't take us into PvP when you're playing on PC. There is a definite difference here.
Yeah, we were just getting smoked the whole time, and then like it was just not fun.
It's not fun. I don't mind Rift overall. I just mind when I'm clearly the only person trying to play the objective on my team and everybody else is treating it like team deathmatch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind Rift either. I just
more objective
was not having. Yeah, I just wasn't having a good time with this version of
the conclusion I came to at the end was fun mode. I think it's really fun if you're playing with a bunch of people. I personally had a bit more fun playing solo. Which I know is really weird because that's where a lot of the complaints I've seen are people who are in the solo playlist. And yeah, it can go one of 2 drastically different ways. I never really had a match where I was totally shut out. I had maybe 3 or 4 of those, but I think most of those came from playing with friends. In the solo playlist, I think I got it once. We scored at least a point or 2 every other match. So it didn't feel horrible, but things I would do to change it, I would bump from 5. If you're going to keep it at 5 points, you need to have a mercy rule kick in if somebody goes 3-0. Otherwise, I would say lower it. Even by lowering it by a point would help. Even bringing it down to 4. I've seen, Paul Tassi suggested it should go down to 3, and I hard disagree on that one. Hard disagree. If Disjunction was the only map, then maybe. But hard disagree with taking it down that far. I think at that point it's just impatience.
I actually don't really care for the new map at all. To be honest with you,
I liked it once I started learning it. I love the tunnels underneath.
Yeah, I don't know. I think just this whole experience with playing against PC players has ruined my whole experience in general.
I mean, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
And so maybe the next time it rolls around, I'll play by myself or just with console players and see what it's like. But I just did not enjoy myself at all. It was not good.
I would say beyond the obvious glitches. The loot system also needs to be looked at. I think the focusing costs are way too high here. And I said the same thing about Gambit focusing as well. Those drastically need to come down in terms of cost. You can't charge 100 legendary shards because how many times do we see veteran players complain they have no legendary shards from infusions and things like that? I have 33,000 of them because I don't use mine hardly at all. And even I think the cost is a little bit too high. It's fine to keep that at Saint because that is an endgame activity as far as I'm concerned. Iron Banner, especially without the light level cap now, is something for everybody to experience. You need to drastically lower those costs, 10 legendary shards or something a focus.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you because I think that's just frankly absurd. This is where I think keeping tokens actually may have helped you. You could have used tokens to earn tokens every match and then use them to focus your Iron Ingrams. I think the rewards track was a little bit rough. Keeping the shader on a second reset that's a tough look. That's a tough look. I think in any other season that would be pretty bad. It's bad here, but it was made less bad by getting the 600 XP per match if you had all 4 of your dailies done, you're wearing all your armor, your emblem, etc. That is going to be rough in a normal season, though. I think for an event that's only 2 weeks. God forbid you're out of town one of those weeks. What the hell are you supposed to do? Keep the.
I actually think I'm going to be out of town the second week it's around. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I think you are actually. We were just talking about that before the show. I think you are. Yeah. That's for me. That's a tough look. Not oh my god, the shader is incredible. But if you're only going to make it obtainable that way, you need to then make it obtainable through the kiosk, like you have previous ornaments from the playlist weapons, you're going to have to make that available in the kiosk at some point.
Right.
Because I think that's just ridiculous to lock something like that. Like, you look at the other Pinnacle activities or the other playlist activities, and you get it at rank 6. You're getting it after like 4 or 5 strikes, 4 or 5 Crucible matches. You're getting it right there.
Right.
And I think that's just frankly ludicrous. Like that, this is, and don't get me wrong, I love that the initial rewards track is all weapons.
Right.
I like that, but I really think it should be for, like, when you hit level 4, boom, here's your, or level 3, whatever it is, I guess it's level 4. Here's your first new weapon. Level 7, here's your shader. Level 10, here's your second new weapon. I don't know. And I mean, I guess it's there to keep the incentive going. I imagine that resetting your rank twice is going to be one of the guildable triumphs every season. But man, if it's something like Rift, GG's guys, have fun doing that. I'm not doing 2 resets for this game mode ever again.
Right.
I will do it if it's control, if it's momentum, if it's mayhem. I will probably play plenty of Crucible then. I cannot possibly see myself doing it for Rift ever again like that. Maybe 1 reset you'll get out of me, because I got to 1 pretty organically this time. I'm not pushing for 2 resets. If I can't be bothered to do 2 resets for Gambit over the course of an entire season, I'm sure as hell not going to do it for Iron Banner.
Right.
For 2 weeks.
Right.
Because that is, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I played last week. I did the story mission, and then I did nothing. And I mean nothing but Iron Banner the rest of the week. I did not touch any other activity. I did not run the dungeon like I wanted to. I didn't get into a raid like I was going to try to. All I did was Iron Banner. For the days I was free. Last weekend was fairly busy. But all day Sunday and Monday, I just grinded on Iron Banner, and it was just an awful experience by the end of the day. By Monday night, I was done.
Yeah. I almost wish this would have been like a Trials Labs, Iron Banner Labs situation, and just let Control be the regular one. You know?
I mean, I just think the mode needed to be tested in regular playlists before you threw it in here. What was wrong with having another season of Crucible Control, or having Iron Banner Control for another season, or, hey, putting this into Labs last season so you could work the kinks out and then say, hey, based on the feedback we've gotten, we've been able to fix some things up, we've been able to fix some spawning issues, etc. We're going to make this the Iron Banner mode now this season to see how you guys treat an objective mode for this, beyond just go stand in a circle and then kill each other.
Right.
And I don't think that experiment really went the way Bungie wanted. I'm glad that there's like 6 or 7 weeks between now and the next Iron Banner. Next Iron Banner won't be until Solstice is over, I believe. But it's still wild. This is still absolutely wild. It's certainly not... There were people being really hyperbolic on Twitter and on Reddit last week going, oh my god, this is worse than the Trials relaunch. No. Sit down, please. The nephews of Destiny, please sit down. You have no idea what you were talking about if you think that this is genuinely worse than Trials of Osiris launching the week that the United States went into lockdown for COVID-19.
Right.
There is nothing that could possibly be worse than that season's launch of Trials. And then guess what? It stayed broken for like a year and a half. There is no possible way that this is worse than that. There's no way. There's just no freaking way.
Mm-mm.
So,
nope.
Like, people who were calling on, as a prominent voice in this community, I'm calling on Bungie to restore control for the rest of Iron Banner for this season. And then just seeing, like, one of my favorite content creators replying to these people going, my dude, it's been 2 hours. You need to calm down.
Right.
Like, God almighty. But, Corey, do we have any final Iron Banner gripes, any final feedback before we actually get to the TWAB that we promised?
I mean, no, except for the fact that the armor is still ugly. But
oh, yeah, the armor still looks like shit.
I mean, it's the same armor that's been there. It's not like anything's changed on that front, but it's still ugly. I'm going to say it until it changes, and then I'll probably say it again because I'm a Titan.
Yep. So TWAB, man, there's really not a lot here. The main thing here is talking about airborne effectiveness. Airborne accuracy, really. God, there's a lot of math in here.
Math is hard.
There are a lot of people who are very, very upset about this change. I am a lowly hunter who does not use stompies, and I do not use shotguns, so I don't really, I guess, grasp how in-air accuracy is affecting a lot of players. I know that puts me kind of at a disadvantage. But the main thing that I want to focus on here is there's a little paragraph here, and I saw a lot of people really upset about this one. I want to try and provide some sort of context if I can. The Season 17 patch notes included a line that incorrectly stated all primary weapons have their airborne accuracy penalty removed. This should have been qualified as, at 60 airborne effectiveness, all primary weapons have had their airborne accuracy penalty removed. Now, this, for reference, the numbers, okay? The numbers that we're talking about here, this is the accuracy count, okay? So 30 AE, similar accuracy to pre-season 17 Icarus grip, suitable for jump shots at mid-range. For example, a hand cannon's accuracy cone at 30 AE is 0.48 degrees compared to 0.47 last season with Icarus. 60 AE fully removes the airborne accuracy penalty and allows for more accurate, longer-range airborne shots. The reason why people are upset about this is it implied that all airborne penalties were removed, when in reality you still needed to really build into that, and a lot of people really aren't sure how to build into it. It seems like it's one of those secret stats right now that on paper, all your super PvP vets are going to be able to build around this as they introduce solutions, because if we scroll down a little bit further, in Season 18 and beyond, we plan on giving players a few new ways to build into the stat, including making the stat visible in the weapon inspection screen and updating some exotic weapons so we felt could use a bump to airborne effectiveness. That is not good enough. I want to be really clear. That is not good enough. That is not just a typo. That is a major fucking difference between what was put out there and what is here now. And I'm trying really hard not to overreact on this, because I've seen some, again, really hyperbolic takes like, oh, they did it maliciously. But this is a continuing issue that we have had. This is not the first instance of having patch notes be put in incorrectly. And I'm not going to sit here and point fingers and go on a witch hunt and name names. That's not what we do here. But holy shit, like, the person who has been responsible for these patch notes, whether it's the person writing the Schwab or it's coming from the team, has got to, like, quadruple check their work some more. This should not have taken 3 weeks into the season to have been realized and addressed. This should have been something that you knew, like, the second it happened. Mm-hmm. When that Schwab went out, that big beefy boy that we covered, and you realized it went out the door like that, is nobody proofreading these? Is nobody on the team, like, looking over that? I'm sorry, if I give somebody some work that has to be put into a presentation, I'm sure as hell gonna want to see that in context.
Right.
Especially if it's going out to, like, 1 million something players.
Right.
So you already have people in the community overreacting and literally, not joking here, sending actual threats to members of the development team, to the community team. They have chased Kevin Yanes off of Twitter, who is the senior sandbox designer of the game, over the Twilight Garrison, his comments about Twilight Garrison never coming back. He literally got death threats and got harassed off of Twitter.
People are so just...
So this is why I'm resistant. Not that I think anybody who listens to this show would participate in anything like that, but I don't want to give any fuel to the fire. Like, I have noticed a specific pattern with a certain person who happens to be on whenever there is a major fuck up to information that has been put out there. So there's got to be some kind of quality check. This is not just a referendum on, hey, Bungie needs to be more clear on communicating this information and be like, hey, we fucked up on this. This is something that one should not have taken content creators and the player base screaming about it for you to take a look at. This should have been noticed right away when it was not put in the Schwab like that. When you had all those other numbers and all that stuff, airborne effectiveness and things like that. 2, you're telling us this the day before the first weekend of trials. We already went through only 2 Iron Banner weekends, and you waited till after Iron Banner to address that. And 3, it's just like, I just come back to it, like, is nobody like, is there not play testing happening with some of these changes? Is there not some overview being done on the patch notes when they go out? What what processes need to change on the back end to make sure that players are getting the information that they need, the accurate information that they need?
Right.
Because I'll be real, this is kind of sad. This is this is kind of like borderline pathetic that this is the fourth or fifth apology we've had to get in probably the last 8 or 9 months about patch notes or about information not being presented in context in the TWABs. And it's becoming a noticeable pattern, and that's really frustrating. Like, as a player and as somebody who tries to cover this game, that is immensely frustrating to me. Like, set aside the fact, airborne effectiveness, okay, whatever. Like, when it's a hidden stat like that, you have to tell us this, because so many people use things like dim to create their builds, and that's the only place where it's visible, is when you can see something inside the API. It's not even something visible on the fucking weapon right now. Like, you made such a huge deal about changing air accuracy, and you didn't add it to the weapon inspection screen this season? What were you thinking? Like, what goes through your mind to think that? And I just, like, I'm not mad, but I am really irritated about it. Like, it's another little pebble that's being thrown into the cog of, guys, this would have been so much simpler if you could have just told us, like, 3-4 weeks ago, hey, this was put in incorrectly. This is how it should read. Go nuts. I think we all would have taken it differently. You probably still would have gotten a pretty bad reaction from the community overall, but I think it would have been a whole lot less than, 12 T-minus 18 hours till Trials comes back. Here you go. Have fun with this information going into week 1.
Right.
Or week 3, weekend 3 of the season. Again, after you've already gone through an entire week of Iron Banner and did not address it or bring it up.
Right.
What else is coming next? Down here again, like, air accuracy. If you need more, explanations on terminology or on the math, it's in there. Feel free to go read it yourself. We have a small mid-season weapon balance shipping with Solstice, which will include buffs to weapon subfamilies that have been languishing for a while, a fix for certain special weapons not getting enough ammo per special brick for one defeat in PvP, and tuning for oppressive exotic weapons. Beyond that, we're wrapping up production on Season 18 weapons and matching balance update, which will be of a standard appropriate size. No novels this time. Some highlights will include revisiting some weapon subfamilies, legendary perk, and exotic weapon tuning, and adding intrinsic anti-champion functionality to several exotic weapons. Sadly, this means that champions are not going anywhere, and my day is ruined. I completely missed this sentence. Yep, my day is ruined. My hopes of champions being sunset, it has been dashed.
Sorry, Josh. Champions are forever.
Champions are love. Champions are life. I just, Corey, anything else on the messaging blunder here, on airborne effectiveness?
It's just
it's an unforced error.
Here, I get that there's a lot of cogs in this wheel, right? There's the design team, there's the testing team, there's the social team, there's you know, this information probably passes through a few people at least before it gets to this TWAB, right? But like, there needs to be some sort of better, not just communication, but where I work, anything that goes on our website, whoever's writing it is not allowed to publish it because there needs to be a second set of eyes always.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
this is why we have editors.
Yeah. So, I mean, there needs to be, even if it's not an editor per se, just somebody who can double check it and say, okay, look, this looks right. This looks right. Even if you have someone from the design team or the sandbox team up there and to double check and say, hey, TWAB's going out today. And I know that, they're not exactly all in the same room, right? But like, you can shoot an email saying, hey, do these numbers look right to you before I send this out? Something like that.
Yeah.
And even if the TWAB is like, I don't know, a half hour late or something, it's this stuff's important to players. And if you're going to miscommunicate it, like, it's good. Look at what happens when they do communicate. Look at the backlash. I mean,
Oh
This
yeah,
is
no.
just
This week's been a prime example in that.
yeah. So I mean, death threats, you should not be threatening people by any means. It's just a video game. But also like a lot of people take this game seriously
Yeah.
and you want to make sure you get those
Mhm.
players that do care the right information.
I mean, there are people who have built their entire, gaming career out of this game, out of Bungie
Right.
games, out of Destiny. I mean, and like I think Dado had a pretty nuanced take on this earlier. He was just like, man, some of y'all are really overreacting to this. It's really not that big of a deal. And then there were some content creators again who I really respect. I'll throw his name out there. I talked about him a lot on the show. Ascendant Nomad, really like his
Uh-huh.
stuff. He was downright furious about this. He was like, "This is borderline," basically saying this is unacceptable. This cannot keep happening. Like this is not the first time it's happened. This is a pretty big fuck up as far as I'm concerned. Um, like
I I
there
mean
there
it's
was there was
it's
some outcry over earlier in the week over the description of what the hunter exotic was supposed to do was also different. That was another thing that was screwed up in that same thing. So like there were multiple things wrong in that same gigantic blog or in
yeah.
explanations of what exotics are supposed to do and whatnot. It's just
I mean that's a bigger issue. Like
yeah,
just getting the what the function of the piece does is a huge blunder.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, like percentages and like number things are one thing, but if you get the what the function of the thing do, because like this came out, this came out what like a week or two before the season.
yeah,
People are already starting to pre-build around
yep,
this thing
yep,
that you've announced, and they're taking those stats that you communicated into consideration and starting to build and starting to prep. That way, they don't have to do as much work when it actually comes out, and they can kind of play around with it. And like if it's not what you said it was, that's a problem for people who take their build super seriously.
yeah. People who take this super seriously, people who like again, we just went through a week of Iron Banner. We're about to go into a weekend of our first weekend of trials. Like
Yeah.
there are people already spinning up comp. Like this matters to those people. This matters to people who are chasing Unbroken, who have a
Hmm.
shot at getting the Unbroken seal, who are chasing Iron Lord, who are chasing Flawless. Like this matters to those people. This matters to them, and
Yeah.
that's an issue. But keeping the discussion on some PvP. Trials is back this weekend. Yay! I'm ready to go
Yay,
suffer for
trials.
that monkey armor.
I
Um,
will actually suffer for some of this armor. This
I'm
armor
very
is
excited
so
for the
cool
armor
looking.
and for the two new weapons. I want to see how the Burden of Guilt fusion goes, but I'm really excited for that Forgiveness sidearm.
Yeah.
Um, turned in my couple trials Ingrams I still had. Sadly, did not get the weapons I was hoping for. I did get the chest piece, and I got another Aisha's Embrace. But there
Ooh.
are two more legendary cosmetics you can chase as well. The Falcon's Chase Sparrow, which is seen here, pretty
That
sleek.
sparrow looks
Got a lot
cool.
of feathers on it, and then there's going to be that little like ram ghost shell. It looks like almost.
Yeah.
Um, excited for that. You can't really get a super good look at it here. It is, however, in the API already, so you can go take a look at it in game in collections if you want to. They both look pretty sleek, so I'm excited for it. It's Elim, like always, so excited to do that. Um, the final Solar 3.0 aspects are out in game. Go grab those. I was one of the ones who was glitched. I was finally able to get my last two. I was not missing four. I was only missing two, apparently. Um, so very excited. Here's some quick numbers for those who are interested. 1.6 million players completed at least one nightmare containment during the event. Um, Guardians averaged 13.8 containments per character. That's
Wow.
wild because I think you had to get to like 15 million or something. That's some wild numbers.
Hmm.
One dedicated player completed over 390 containments over the course of this event. And this event, for reference, took about 10 to 12 days to do. In the first 24
Wow.
hour, one Guardian did 78 nightmare containments.
What?
I have done like maybe 30 of these things total, if that. If that. That's wild. There's a special little solar emblem here that you can go redeem. The code is in the TWAB for you guys. And kind of the last thing that we're gonna talk about right here. Very excited about this. There are 3 new legendary cosmetics. If you've not been to the Eververse yet, they are only going to be available for silver this season. I believe they are 600 silver a piece. But each of these legendary class item ornaments, aside from looking cool, which they already do, interact specially with an exotic from each class. So the hunters have the cloak of Bacchus. It pairs with the Hunter exotic helmet, the Mask of Bacchus, and it adds a stasis effect on the collar. I don't think that this is really a good representation of it right here, unfortunately, in the image. But a buddy of mine does use Mask of Bacchus a lot. I'm going to ask him if I give him $5, will he take a screenshot of how it looks in game for me? Mark of the Falling Star pairs with the Titan chest piece Curious of the Falling Star, adds an arc effect on the mark's trim. This thing looks awesome. It
This
absolutely
thing's cool.
looks
I will
awesome.
probably get this.
It looks awesome when it's in use. It is, for some reason, it's not showing the arc trim here, which is really frustrating. And then the Bond of Battle Harmony adds an arc effect on the bottom of the Bond awning. This also looks really cool. Nerd bought it within like 10 minutes of the season starting, I think, and it just looked super dope. I like how both this and the Titan one look. I need to see how the Hunter one looks. I just don't wear Mask of Bacchus. The other two at least get used. I don't really have a reason to run Bacchus that much, unfortunately. I hope this is a fun little experiment they did. I want to see them do some more of these in the future. Especially when it comes to hunters with cloaks. I'll buy every single cloak. I don't care. I'll do it. I kind of want to buy the Titan mark also. Heck, I want to buy all 3 of them, but I don't want to spend that much money on classes I don't play.
Right.
So that's cool there. I really, really, really like that. The Pride Strike team has some words for us here. June month is Pride month, of course. We talked about the 2.0 pin last week with the new prismatic emblem. Really spiffy emblem here. I think it's this year we have a really fun and colorful ask of the community, but we think it's better requested with equally colorful quotes. Show us your pride, Destiny fans. Show us your best Destiny LGBTQ plus headcanon. Light is a spectrum. Why limit yourself to a single hue? Show us the Rainbow Guardians. And show us your, and this is from Sam Bartley, presumably, one of our lovely community managers. Show us your gay Destiny, safe for work art, please. So to clarify what we're trying to say, we're asking you to show us your Destiny-themed Pride art, and those are the non-artist variety. Never fear, we have something for you too. Introducing Drestiny Pride Edition. Show us your favorite Destiny fashion while wearing your trans emblem or Pride emblem, and we will share our favorites. And if you're asking yourself, what do I get out of this? Well, a colorful sense of community and inclusion. Pride Month is incredibly important to us here, not just as Bungie employees, but also as people. Because of this, we have a few more celebrations on the horizon, so keep an eye on Bungie comms throughout the month of June to see what we've got cooking up next. I love this. I love this so much. Please, really cool. Please do this for other things throughout the year. I would really love to see a celebration like this during Black History Month. I think there's so many cool things you can do for different things that Bungie has already made emblems for. They've already made emblems for it. They already celebrate. Why not go crazy with it? I think there's plenty you can do here. So hey, we all get to play. We all win. When we all get to see ourselves in game, we win. There's some things down here with upcoming known issue. Well, with known issues, there's a lot there. I'm gonna let you guys read that. And then when it gets down to art of the week, I don't usually call these out. I just encourage you guys to go watch them. There are 2 that I really, really love here. One is from username Gamma Trap, but cute. And it's the Warlock wearing the solar armor, doing the snap with the Dawn Blade out. It looks really cool. I would love a print of this. I would frankly buy a print of this. And then
it's cool looking.
One of my all-time favorite art pieces that they've ever featured in here, from Olak 3D. It's the Deep Crypt Spacewalk, and it was a commission they did for the Ugly Hipster, clearly of their fire team out there. This is so cool. I've wanted an art piece of the spacewalk. And again, if I could buy a commission of this, I would 100% buy it, frame it, put it up on my wall. 100%.
Yeah.
This is really cool. So as always, please go look at those. If you find a piece of art or something deserving of it, tag it with hashtag Destiny 2 art of the week, and movie of the week. But that's going to do it for a TWAB that is really short, but we kind of need to go into detail on a lot of things there. Corey?
Yeah. Yes.
Let's talk some story. Let's
do it. I want to talk about the story.
I want to talk about the story. We talked a little bit about that opening mission, week 1. When you encounter when you go into Callus's throne room and you have to escape and you encounter the Nightmare of Galran on your way. I find it interesting that Galran is still like, maybe he's like the Leviathan's nightmare at this point. Because we get some interesting dialogue in this week's Sever quest if you find the Callus robot in it, where he basically says that him and the Leviathan are one and the same, that they've essentially fused at this point. Callus's essence is in the Leviathan. Leviathan is, as we know, a living vessel, and Callus has kind of found a way to fuse himself with it. That's distressing. At best, that's distressing. At worst, that's apocalyptic. Not
don't
great.
Like this.
No, don't like that. So it kind of makes sense, I guess, that Galran is kind of haunting parts of the parts of the Leviathan at this point, especially Callus's throne room. We do, of course, see him as the first boss in the duality dungeon. He's the first one that you fight there, clearly on Callus's mind still, and of course we end with Keitel. I think it's interesting that Destiny is this story. You know, we talked about it last year, where, and we talked about it briefly a couple weeks ago, where we think of it as a game that on the surface it's bang bang pew pew aliens, but last year we really dug into things like racism, xenophobia, bigotry, sabotage, insubordination. There were a few other themes, of course, that poverty, refugees, and somehow this game about pew pew bang bang was telling those stories better than any other fiction that was currently out there in video games, at least. It was doing something that a lot of other video games are too afraid to touch on when they're real world games. And yet somehow a sci-fi epic that has me killing a giant worm god is also teaching me these things. And it's talking about them. And, the company behind them is taking real world stances on things. It's adding, a canonical LGBTQ romance to the game with two of its most popular and most revered characters in Osiris and Saint 14. This season, they've decided that they're going to Bungie's going to become like our personal therapist. They're going to become, our trauma counselors. And man, I really hate their uncanny ability to be timely with this. But, we saw it with Crow the first 2 weeks. Eventually Crow conquers his, and you actually see Uldren's spirit in the light, hanging out in the helm now. He's hanging out over there by the Crown of Sorrow. I'm sure that's not going to come back to bite us in the ass.
Nope. Definitely not.
This week we met a character that we haven't met before. We've heard her mentioned in canon, and I don't believe we ever knew her name. We met Sarifa.
I love this.
We met Sarifa
so much.
If you have not played this week's Crown of Sorrow missions, I implore you to pause the podcast. Please go play that, watch the cutscene, then come back, because we're about to full spoil this. We got another cutscene this week after completing the Sever mission. And what we're doing is we're aiding Commander Zavala this week, who is haunted by the memory of his wife.
Yeah.
As the cutscene goes, for those of you who don't remember, or maybe you never knew, Zavala was Saladin's protege. That is something that goes back to the early days of Destiny 1. That was some of the earliest lore we got on the Tower guys, on Saladin and on Zavala and Shaxx, is that Shaxx and Zavala were both proteges of Zavala, or of Saladin at one point, and they all kind of went their own ways. Which is why I was so excited when we got Saladin trying to apologize to Zavala last year. And it was that much more impactful that, Savathun drives the wedge between them, but he still becomes the ambassador to Keitel and ultimately becomes her war counselor. in the role that she wanted Zavala in a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit unwillingly, but he does it to save Crow's life. And, we see these decisions start to weigh on Crow over the course of this season, but finally coming to terms with, I was Uldren. Uldren did these things. I did not. I'm different than him, but we're also not so different at the same time. That kind of confronting our traumas is what can bring out the best of ourselves.
Right.
Not just for ourselves, but for other people. And I love that he addresses it by saying, if the hunters will have me, I'd love to bring some organization to them. I didn't know Cade, but everything I know of him, basically, I'd like to replicate that. So, further hinting that he will become the Hunter Vanguard at some point. Thus, ultimately, ironically, fulfilling the Vanguard dare.
Right.
Zavala's mission, though. You get down there, and you see Zavala just crumpled. And it's the only time I've ever wanted to be like, can I give an MDC a hug?
Right.
Can I activate my emote and just, crouch down with Zavala and just hug him? Because I feel like that's what my Guardian would do. He wouldn't just stand there fucking silent.
Right.
Not even Ghost is saying anything, and that's just kind of alarming. Like, okay, guys, I know we had to trim the budget, but we didn't have to trim it that much. If there was ever a time for Ghost to speak, I feel like it's here. But I love that Eris is the one narrating the cutscene. You see Zavala and Saladin, and Sarifa is a medic who comes to Felwinter's Peak at one point, and is talking with Zavala. Her and Zavala hate each other at first, but they grow to love each other. And it's really powerful when it shows her bandaging one of his wounds, and as this happening, you see it glowing, and it kind of indicating there's a bond. The bond has been sealed between them. He falls in love with her, and they ultimately leave. He basically runs away with her in the night. He tells Saladin he's leaving, and it's discussed in the lore piece from this week, which I can't access because of the APIs. But he leaves his Iron Lord's medallion behind. As a message
powerful.
to Saladin. Yeah, it's very powerful. They come upon a convoy that's been ambushed, and there's a baby crying. And they raise the baby as their own, as their son.
Hakim.
And unfortunately, it's not to last. We get the impression that Hakim grew up. We don't know quite how old. I would say at least 15, 16, judging by how he looks in the cutscenes. And a Elixir raid happens again. And in that, Zavala goes out to protect his farm. We find out Zavala was a farmer.
Yeah.
Farmer Zavala. Can you imagine Zavala in some overalls with a straw hat on? It's pretty great.
One of those, the pitchforks and a little straw.
Back in my day down in the South.
Tobacco.
Yeah, he's chewing tobacco or something. Yeah. Hakim decides, despite Zavala's orders not to come out there, goes out there and is killed.
Yeah.
And it destroys Sophia and Zavala. It absolutely destroys them completely. And they decide the grief is too much to bear. And they go their separate ways. Zavala goes back to the Iron Lords, and she goes back to a community of people. Eventually remarries, has a daughter. I'm sure that's going to come into play at some point.
Right.
She has a daughter. We know that. And then after she passes, Zavala goes to her and Hakim's graves all the time, regularly. He's held this with him. We have to assume for at least 700-800 years. He's carried this with him. And it has weighed on him so much. And we had some lore last year that talked about her, without giving her name, I believe. I want to research and find that piece of lore because I want to read it next week, when presumably this part of the story will reach its conclusion. But it kind of gives some introspection into why Zavala is the way that he is, ultimately, why he was so protective. We brought up how he reacts after Cade's murder by Uldren, and how when Ikora is furious and wants to storm the reef, and Zavala tells her, no, I will not lose you as well. I will not lose my other friend. I will not lose one of the only other people that I actually can depend on and tell my secrets to. I will not lose you as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from this light now, it almost, not that he was doing it, making it sound like this, but it almost sounds selfish in a way where like he's experienced
Yeah.
so much loss in his life that like he doesn't want to lose anyone else. And you look at that whole cutscene where Cade dies and she wants to storm the reef, and he says no. Like, it's almost selfish for
Yeah.
him instead of protecting her in a way. So.
Yeah, it's just this wild story that's going on, and it's just it's powerful. I don't know how else to say it. Like, it's one of the most powerful things they've ever done, because anyone who's ever lost someone that they love dearly, whether it be, a friend, a partner, a parent, you understand exactly what Zavala is going through at that time, especially if you, in any way, shape, or form, feel responsible. Liana, one of our community managers, shared a story on Twitter earlier today about when she was younger, about 20 years ago, I think is what she said. And a friend of hers was killed. Um, I don't know, killed by, I believe it was by a drunk driver. I don't know if maybe she was. But she's carried that with her all this time and just had to kind of get it out there. We saw it affecting Dylan, good old Damage. The man who was his best man at his wedding, who works at Bungie, has been in the hospital the last couple of weeks with a pretty life-threatening illness, pretty serious illness and ailment, and it's been weighing on him. I've shared before, I have my own struggles, with depression and, with people that I've lost. And I think the older you are, the more likely it is that you've experienced something that this may, and I don't say this lightly, that may trigger you. It may trigger a response in you. Like, I played that, and I was like, wow, that may be enough Destiny for me for the week when I played that on Tuesday afternoon. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go back and do any more story stuff this week, because that hit me so hard. And I think it's very powerful that Eris is the one doing it, because Eris is probably the only character before Crow, obviously before Crow, to ever overcome the demons of her past and her own nightmares. We obviously help her through that with the Xenophage quest. And man, I don't think that really, like, trying to explain it and explain the rationale here really, like, does it justice. But I think it's very poignant that this comes 2 years into a global health emergency. Some of us are just now, getting back to society for the first time. Things aren't back to normal per se. But basically everybody is like, oh, well, it's over now. And no, a good chunk of us are like, no, it's really not, and, kind of dealing with the collective emotional trauma, I think, of the last couple of years is bringing out some pretty strong feelings too right now. So I guess I would just say, like, to anybody who maybe is struggling, when you play this awesome story, it's arguably the best cutscene they've ever done. We talk about things like the Saint, which was so important for Saint 14's character moving forward, and for setting the story. It's been almost a year to the day since we got that as well. In fact, I would say it's been about a year to the day. Getting some of these Savathun cutscenes. We talk about, Saint and Mithrax fighting together. Like, those are all cool. This is game changing on a different level. On a level of, where is the story willing to go? What are they willing to say while you're going pew pew bang bang? What emotional beat are they going to put behind this? What message are they going to send you? And I really think what it is this week is, and this whole season is, you are not alone. Like, I really think that's the message that Bungie's trying to get across here. And I think that's kind of at the core of all their games, whether they've overtly said it or not. Whether it's the bond between Chief and Cortana, Keyes and Johnson, both Keyes and Johnson. And then Destiny, with the loss of Cade, and, now with conquering traumas and nightmares and the things that keep us awake at night, so to speak, being forced to confront those things heads on. It really is like if Destiny was having group therapy in a lot of ways.
Right.
So I would encourage anybody who, feels like they have, some demons in their past, who have, thoughts to keep them awake at night, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this delicately, because I tend to talk about it a little bit cavalierly when it comes to my own life. I would encourage you to know a few things: that you are not alone. There are mental
Mm-hmm.
health resources that, keeping it in kind of the Destinyverse, there are mental health resources that Bungie has compiled. We talked about those a couple months ago. They are readily available on Bungie.net. And I would encourage you, like, it is not a weakness to seek therapy. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a weakness to seek help, to find a group that you can confide in, to find a therapist, to find a one-on-one therapist, to say, hey, I'm really struggling. I need some sort of medication to help me out here. There is no shame in any of that.
No, there's really.
I felt a lot of shame for a long time.
Yeah.
And when I finally decided to straighten my life out, so to speak, and finally take care of myself and take care of my own mental health, I noticed changes. And it's still, it's up and down. Like I have great days, I have great weeks. This is a good week right now. I will inevitably crater out at some point in the next few weeks because I can't see my therapist for a while. So I will probably crater out before I gradually come back up. And it's just like, just because you sought therapy or you sought help doesn't mean, and I think this is something that the game's trying to convey to you also, like, it doesn't mean that, oh, you're going to be 100% forever. It just means, okay, you conquered that. Now what's the next mountain we have to conquer? What's the next thing we have to conquer? And it's okay if you find yourself fighting. Like, if you find yourself with an internal conflict, that is okay. That does not make you weak. You did not regress. You did not give up. It just means you need a little bit of help. You need an extra push along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, also, like, not that I'm, like, a therapist or anything, but, like, my DMs are open,
Yeah.
they're open. If you feel like you need a community, like, where I'm here too, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know how much help I can be, but I'm always willing to listen to our friends in our community and stuff. So, because like Josh said, we've all been through a lot, and Josh and I in particular have been through things too. It's, yeah. So
Yeah. So I don't really know if there's anything else to say there. Just it's a really powerful story beat this week. This whole season is a really powerful story beat. I saw some people going, "Oh God, we got another season of Crow and his problems," and I think this is actually what a lot of Crow's storyline has actually been building to. Since he found out who he really was, he was trying to find out from the minute that we met him in Season of the Hunt. He was trying to figure out who he was, and that secret was being kept from him. The tower was totally in agreement. He does not need to know. And then Savathun goes and tells him in Season of the Lost, when we're trying to keep him from her. That's how he ends up working with the Cabal and with Saladin, really becomes Saladin's protege. Commits the act that he does in Season of the Risen, which it was just him wanting to be friends with the Scion, thinking the Scion is doing this against his will. Oh, I'll free him and we'll go get ramen together. It's really something that innocent. And then, he has to realize, like, he's still a kindergarten. Oh my God, my actions have consequences. Mm-hmm. This is a guy that from the minute he was risen as a guardian was being killed by other guardians for sport because he was Uldren. And I think one of the most powerful messages that we've learned through Crow's storyline over the last 2.5 years is that your past does not define you. Your previous actions do not define you. And there's always room for meaningful change and for atonement. I think it's one of those powerful, like, subtle things that his storyline can teach us, going all the way back to when we start reading his lore about when he was first resurrected and things like that. They were laying the seeds in the lore for years here. And to see the culmination of it this season, and I really do hope this is the end of Crow's story for quite a while. But more importantly, I hope this is the first chapter in a new story for Zavala as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Because it feels like a jumping off point here, because the third person we're going to deal with is clearly Keitel. So how is Zavala's trauma going to help Keitel overcome the trauma of Gaul and her father?
Right. This kind of feels like a twofold, right? Like, it's the end of the beginning for Crow.
Yeah.
Right. And feels like the beginning of the end for Zavala.
It does. I wouldn't be shocked if this is really the first step in the end of Zavala's storyline, which I don't think is coming to an end anytime soon. We just said, Crow's storyline has taken 2.5 years to unfold at this point, and that's just what we've seen on screen. That's not counting if you look at the entire story of Uldren dying And then coming back, you read the lore pieces we were getting around the Dawning and things like that the year before.
I mean, theoretically, I mean, you talk about Crow's story. It's been here since Vanilla Destiny 1, if you count meeting Aldrin and his kind of, well, I don't like what you're doing here type thing. And then you go into the Taken King, right? And he's, his ship explodes and you don't know where he's at. And then Forsaken comes around, right? Because he's hiding out on Mars with the Scorn. Right. And I mean, this is a 8-9 year journey already with him.
Yeah, this has been
cool to see
been a long
that
journey, and like I think you had a really, not to cut you off, I think you had a really good point about Zavala. Like, is this the beginning of the end? And I think that's a really reasonable question for us to ask, because we were kind of wondering that about Eris. Like, well, Eris has conquered her demons. Surely her time is up now. That was the biggest story beat for Eris, was going to be getting over that and getting over the loss of the light. And we see that not only through her storyline, but the war we had with Crow last week about the Golden Gun, and just how important that was. Like, that was the first. That's the first time that she's wielded the light since losing her ghost to Crota. And just like at what point do we see the Zavala story beat start to ramp up? And I gotta think it's Lightfall. I gotta think it's gonna be a little bit subtle. Like him and Keitel feel like they're gonna be our story vessels for the rest of the year. They obviously were huge in Risen. I think they're gonna continue being big the rest of this year before something earth shattering happens at the end of the year. I don't know that they'd be so bold to kill off Zavala, but I think nobody's off the table. Like, if they're going to bring in things like Zavala's wife and son, nothing's off limits for these people. So, with all that taken into consideration, let's go ahead and let's go to Lore Corner while we're still talking about people's traumas and things like that. I want to share two particular pieces this week. I was kind of trying to debate between three of them. But I think we're gonna take Eris's story and that's in the armor. We're gonna set that aside for just now. We're probably gonna have to circle back around to that later on in the season. What I want to read is the first one I want to do is Second Chance, the exotic for Titans this season. The little shields on your shoulders. I want to read that one. Second Chance, do you deserve it? A high-pitched whistle echoed off the walls of Bannerfall as the shield soared through the air. It ricocheted off one broken pillar, then another, before Shax caught it in midair. He held it firm, its void light illuminating his armor. So how is he? Asked the Crucible Handler. He threw the shield back the way it came, bouncing off a tree and then a crate until it landed in Saint 14's deft hands. No change, Saint answered with a frustrated sigh. He hurled the shield forward, watching it rebound back to Shax, who caught and held it again. Sometimes Saint's voice trembled as he trailed off, and Shax lowered the shield to his side. Yes? Sometimes I wonder if I deserve this, Saint continued. I keep thinking back to the Elixni who cowered from me in fear, the monstrous things I did to their people. What if Osiris is being made to pay my debts? Slowly, Shax lowered the edge of the shield to rest on the ground. When I was a warlord, he said, his voice unusually quiet, I inflicted immeasurable pain and suffering on both humans and Elixni. Now I train guardians for battle. Some might even call me a role model. It was Shax's turn to sigh, but they'd be wrong. He lifted the shield and gave it another toss. Saint caught the shield one-handed, then let its light fizzle out. Are you telling me not to blame myself? Shax shook his head. I'm telling you that people don't always get what they deserve in life, us included. He formed his light into a new shield and sent it flying through the air. Shax has very quietly had some of the more poignant moments of the last few seasons. We talked about it last year with one of the legendary weapons from the Crucible, and it was him and Mithrax talking about the Battle of the Six Fronts, I believe, and Survivor's Epitaph. That's what it was. They're both talking about that, and realizing that they both did horrible things during that battle. And Saint's been on this journey of self-discovery, like I said, ever since season Splicer. And I think it's just, this is important to realize that like Shax may not get a ton of characterization in the actual game, but in the lore, he actually has a fairly powerful story here. Like we always joke about, oh, the helmet stayed on, and he can recite Shakespeare and the Tempest and all that. Like he's actually a really deep character when you get into it. Like I would love, I want a season to focus on Shax so badly. If we're dealing with everybody's bullshit, we might as well get to his. Like
Right.
I would really love to see, what is it that Shax is running from in his past? What made him so determined to train up the new lights to make sure that they didn't repeat the same thing and abuse their light for bad? I'd love to get some perspective from Shax's ghost eventually. And then we see that Saint is still beating himself up over things that he did, back before he left for Mercury. And that he thinks that that what happened to Osiris is all his fault. And of course, we know that it's not Saint's fault, not even remotely. But that he's never forgiven himself for what happened. That most of the time that he's been back, Osiris wasn't actually Osiris. He's had precious little time with the person who's dearest to him in the whole world. And so I do hope that we eventually get some more of Osiris, that he comes out of the coma. I suspect that is something that happens with Lightfall. I don't know if this is necessarily too deep. It's just, that there's enough regret to go around, I think. That you don't always get what you deserve in life, whether that's your punishments or your just desserts. You don't always get what it is that you deserve. And I think that's something that resonates with all of us, right? Why do bad things happen to good people? That's essentially the question being asked here. But I think to get further into that, we need to read our second piece, which is the Trespasser Exotic Sidearm.
The Trespasser.
It kills me to say it, but I really am impressed, the voice says, an echo reverberating from the past. Ikora does her best to keep focused, to push past a breath of resurging anguish. But a nightmare like this refuses to be so easily ignored. It stands at her side, wearing her friend's face, horn and all, the ribboned edges of its cloak swaying beside the hand cannon holstered at its hip. It speaks with his voice, but its words are false and dripping with poison. She forces herself forward, climbing the steps to the Leviathan's entrance. Walking in uninvited is usually my whole thing, it continues as it floats beside her. Unless you started taking after me. You are nothing more than a memory, Ikora replies without looking at it. You are not him. Can't argue with that logic, it says, flashing a smile. After all, he's dead. Ikora flinches as the nightmare circles around, hovering just over her shoulder. Thanks to Zavala, you, and most of all, thanks to Uldren Sov. Ikora's brow furrows and she clenches her fists, continuing her ascent. He shot me with my own gun, the nightmare presses. Do you remember that? Ikora picks up the pace. Still, the nightmare follows. I mean, you must, right? It asks. What was it you promised to do? Mount his head on his precious throne? That was some real big talk, Ikora. But instead of doing that, you welcome that scumbag to the tower with open arms. So I'm thinking, either your memories are a little mixed up, or maybe you really have forgotten what that murderer did to me. Crow is not Uldren, Ikora seethes. Nightmare smirks. Right. Just like I'm not Cade. Ikora spins on her heel, chest heaving, void light flaring in her fists and deep within her eyes, but there is nothing behind her. Only the emptiness of space. Ikora. Eris's voice crackles over the comms. Perhaps it would be best for you to return. Ikora breathes deeply, palms flat at her sides. She gives the Leviathan's doors one long final look before turning back. I find it very interesting that Ikora's nightmare takes the place of Cade. Or plays the part of Cade.
Yeah.
She still feels guilt over it years later. I mean, canonically in universe, it's been, 3.5, almost 4 years? She still feels responsible for this. For whatever reason, she's still beating herself up over it. It was her best friend. Her best friend died.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the same thing like with Zavala's wife. Like, it wasn't his fault at all, but he still holds himself responsible for not protecting her and Hakim. Ikora still feels the same, I think, for not reining in Cade when she could have tried to. You were never going to contain Cade. But I think more than anything, this just kind of emphasizes like how unfortunate it is that we don't have the old campaigns anymore. Because somebody coming into this game for the first time, like with the Witch Queen, or that's just playing New Light, is going to be like,
Right.
well, what the heck? Like, why is this Cade guy so important? You know, and there's a reason why they're not having this play out on screen. Although I think that would have been very powerful to have the
Yeah.
nightmare of Cade. And I'm
gosh.
not entirely convinced that Cade's nightmare won't show up in game.
Yeah.
I think that's just too prime of an opportunity there, whether to torment Ikora or even to torment the Guardian.
Right.
Because honestly, that's what I think. I think that's what the Guardian's nightmare would have taken place of. Like, of course, you know, we fought the nightmare of Gaul and of Crota and the Gate Lord and things like that in the Shadowkeep campaign. We've technically banished our nightmares, but I always felt that would be one of the ones that would take that place for us, especially because Shadowkeep happens a year after Cade's death.
Right.
I'm still surprised that it doesn't. I think now it would take the shape of, you know, if the Guardian had to go through them again, it would be Cade. It would be probably Uldren to some degree. Osiris. Definitely right. Osiris. I feel like Savathun would be the big one. Or it'd be a big one right there alongside Gaul. Like, you know, maybe that's like your unholy trinity right there.
Right.
But
Oryx, maybe?
Who?
Oryx? At all?
Yeah, I mean, Oryx would you? I mean, we were fighting nightmares of Oryx like way back in the day. You know, we fought him in the Reckoning too.
Right.
We fought shadows of it.
Right.
I think it's just fascinating to see like who haunts each character and what they're really holding with them. You know, and I think Ikora's to take the shape of Cade is interesting. I would have thought Ikora's would have taken the shape of the Speaker, possibly. Because she failed to save him in the attack on the tower. She went to go try and secure the Speaker, while we went to go fight Gaul, and then we all lost the light.
Right.
Maybe they just couldn't get Bill Nighy to come back and do the voice anymore. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, but you could get somebody.
Get Nolan North.
You could get
Nolan North. It's okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, you could probably get somebody that could imitate his voice. I mean, it's a distinct voice.
Pretty easily.
I bet a halfway decent voice actor could at least imitate it, right?
Yeah. That would be my general thought. But I just think, like, especially as we start getting into more of the context of the nightmares of this season, I think these are two pretty powerful things to keep in the back of our minds. Like, Saint may not be seeing nightmares. He's living one, though. You know, Osiris is still comatose after several months, after he spent all that time looking for the real Osiris and, you know, found out that his best friend and his lover had been impersonated by a hive queen for the entire year. Right. That's pretty alarming.
Yeah.
He really didn't get much time with Osiris before Osiris went hunting for the pyramids.
Right.
So, with that being said, though, we're going to read we have two questions tonight. We're going to do our questions before we get on out of here.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm getting them pulled up right now. So our first question comes from Tomcat in Socks. Question for tonight's show. Nice. Can you take a few minutes to explain which mods stack and how much of a difference those stacks can make? Love Tower Casuals. Love the show. Well, Tomcat, I actually went digging for some answers for you because there's a few mods, namely the Warmind Cell mods, that if you read the description of them, it says these mods do not stack. Copies of this mod will not stack with each other. Whereas other things, like specifically the Charged with Light mods, will stack. I tend to run a Charged with Light build a lot. I run 2 high energy fires usually. If I don't have any spaces for anything else, this early on in the season, I'm typically running a couple high energy fires, and then those will get swapped out gradually for combat style mods out of the season pass. But when it comes to normal everyday mods, like your ammo finders, your targeters, your loaders, your holsters, etc., Bungie has stated in the past that when you run those, you can run copies. You can run 2 of the same kind, but the second mod will have 50% less effectiveness than the first one. So the first one, you're getting the first version of the mod, you're getting the full kind. If you copy that mod and run a second one, you will get it with reduced effectiveness. I do not believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, we may have to get John on here for a mod check at some point, but if you're running combat style mods such as high energy fire, stacks on stacks, elemental wall mods, etc., I do not believe those are reduced in their effectiveness. I believe it is just the like the ammo perks, the targeters, things like that, or unless it specifically says it in the description. There are sometimes ones in the artifact mod that will say it, and there are some, and of course, all the Warmind Cell ones say that because Warmind Cells were so overpowered. I do not believe it applies to Charged with Light or Elemental Wells, though, when you go into combat style. I do not believe so. I'm going to do a little bit more investigating on this this next week and make absolutely certain. I saw your question not too long before we started recording, so I want to make sure that we get the full context in there for you. So this may be part one of a two-part answer.
Yeah, I would actually like to hear John's, because I mean John is our kind of, at least for me, especially being a Titan, he's the one that always, I'm like, hey, I need a build. Can you tell me what some mods are, what armor pieces I need, that kind of thing, and he always builds me a great build. Maybe we can revisit this question when he comes on again next week.
Maybe,
or whenever he comes on next.
We're gonna try our hardest to get John on here next week. I want him to come on and talk weapons with us as we start approaching episode 100. I want to get builds and stuff like that out of the way so we can just celebrate the week of Bungie Day.
Right.
We will get him on here though. Some other resources I would highly recommend to you. They're ones that we've repeated a bunch of times on the show, but there's a couple streamers I really really like who are great for build crafting, especially when it comes to PvP. For PvE stuff, I turn to Datto a lot. Datto and Astacross, Fallout plays, I turn to them a lot. Fallout is definitely more of a PvP guy. And then for PvP style stuff and builds, again, Fallout plays, Ascendant Nomad, cool guy games, and True Vanguard sometimes has some really good builds. He just mainly, absolutely demolishes other teams. But he has good PvP strategies as well for builds. I know Datto had a guide at one point, I don't know how up to date it is, of easy builds for people who are new to mods or who are intimidated by mods. I would really recommend trying to find that video. I did find that to be a good resource. He goes over a lot of terminology and some basic builds. And I think, especially now with the stasis armor, it is with the stasis armor, with aspects, with everything else, like build crafting is so important. Like you almost have to use dim or like use, multiple screens and like sheets to figure out what you're doing. Even I find myself having to back in and out of menus all the time, trying to build, okay, well, here's what I'm gonna do for my solar set. What about void? What about stasis? I'm getting to a point where I almost need to have armor set up and set aside for each of those classes to be able to just swap into.
Right.
I'm getting very close to a point where I'm going to have to do that most likely. And it's not even like about, switching up from PvE to PvP, which that's a whole nother conversation. It's mainly just, okay, well, different aspects do different things. Different fragments do different things in my builds. Like, I may have plus 10 recovery here, but I'll plus 10 resilience in my solar build. Well, that's a problem. And then, I'm building everything around the artifact. What happens when the artifact is gone? I'm really going to feel not having that solar and void resistance.
Right.
Next season. Like having both those in one neat little thing is fantastic. I love it. So yeah, part one of a two-part answer. We're gonna get John on here for a definitive answer at some point. If I can't get him on next week, then I will have an answer for you. Yes. Question number 2. As always, question of the week coming in from Andre.
Andre,
no video this week. He just did so good last week. He couldn't bear to do this any better. Tonight's question is: at what moment did you guys know you were hooked on Destiny 1 or 2? Was there a certain mission, cutscene, etc.? Corey, I'll let you take this one first.
So I played Destiny 1 from the very beginning, right? Beta, alpha, PS4, and I played through the main campaign of 1. I didn't love it, which I'm sure a lot of people were kind of on that train. I know people stuck with it, but like I really didn't start getting into Destiny like we are now until I would say a little bit after House of Wolves came out.
Yeah.
And my friend, fun. This actually isn't my first Destiny podcast. Josh remembers Weekly Strike
Yeah.
when I used to do that with my friend Brian, and
Old
we,
DNA.
yeah, oh my gosh, that channel it still exists. If you want to not seek it out, that'd be great. Um, no, it was fun. But and I think the moment I fell in love with Destiny is when we were doing the Taken King campaign, and they were
Yeah.
talking about the raids, and they were talking about, I went through Vault of Glass for the first time with them. I went through this, the chase for the moments of triumph before Taken King came out.
Oh my god. Dude, doing Skolas was a
Oh god,
whole
dude, Skolas.
experience.
Dude, Skolas was easily one of the worst experiences. And not
Before
not
I
that it.
think the terminology loser lap was coined in that fight.
Yeah. Oh god, that was just. And then, but I think the moment I fell in love with Destiny is when we were leveling up for the Taken King. We all took off work that day. We all waited in that dumb queue. Remember when the queues were there?
I do
And
remember that.
my wife asked me why I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, don't worry about it. And
Yeah.
we were grinding that whole week to play the Taken King that weekend. And we got through the War Chief on opening weekend, and we were trying to figure out Gogoroth. But then once we finally got it down, we were doing the hard mode of Taken King in and out in like 45 minutes. Like we
Yeah.
literally had it down to a science. It was uh, so I guess the moment I fell in love with Destiny was like Taken King, having that raid team, having the kind of, okay, Wednesday nights raid night,
Yeah.
weekend is competitive, or like, hey, we want to do the raid on our second or third character. Let's go, let's do it. But then we just got to the point where we were raiding on all three characters on Wednesday night and completing it in like 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I guess, and I mean, I love Destiny more now because I think the story has gotten better and more. There's more to it now than it was then, right? Like, I love where Zavala's story is going. I love where Saladin's going. I love the evolution of Aldrin and Crow. Savathun is right now, but like, it was different then, and it was the way I love Destiny back then is different than the way I love Destiny now. But I can definitely point to the Taken King as like, this is where I fell in love with Destiny.
Yeah, I think that for me, I've had a very tumultuous relationship with Destiny over the years. Um, I remember playing the beta for the first time and exclaiming when I walked out of the wall for the first time and found the Fallen Walker event, going, I love this game. Declaring like, this is what I wanted. This is the natural evolution of where Halo would have gone next with the gameplay and the gunplay. It was already top notch from the very beginning.
Until they changed that opening mission when the game launched and the Fallen Walker wasn't there.
And the Fallen Walker was not there.
That event was not there. You walked out and it was empty, right? You shot like 5 dregs and a
I was
Vandal.
I was fairly disappointed. For me, like, I mean, I guess I could point to Vault of Glass because unlike Corey, I did Vault within about a week and a half of it coming out. And Vault is still one of the coolest things I've ever done. Largely did it blind. Had a group that had done it a few times. They had run it 2 or 3 times already. Found them on back when we used to have to use an LFG site.
Oh God, remember those things?
That was running it. Made some great friends out of it. I played Destiny 1 with those guys for the rest of its run. That was my raid group through that LFG. They were high as fuck, but they were great. Shout out to G4 Mod and Lord Scrap. You guys were awesome. They're still on my friends list to this day.
Lord Scrap
And their buddy Morningwood was there. That was great too. Yeah, Oh, early 2010s names, 2014 names. Oof, it was rough.
Mm.
I would say the moment I really fell in love with Destiny, though, probably wasn't during Destiny 1. As much as I liked the Taken King, I still did the same thing I did with Vanilla, and I bounced after a month. For me, it really took until Destiny 2 for me to go, all right, I'm here, I'm not leaving. And it wasn't even Cade Six's death. I would say it was seeing the Taken Meatball for the first time that eats Ultron. It's
Oh
the
yeah,
moment I
God.
think I fell in love with Destiny for good, because I was like, this is just so ridiculously absurd that I'm here for it. This makes no sense. I don't know what this is. It just says it's the voice of Riven, but that is a meatball, my friends. That is a meatball with tentacles.
Yeah,
Little did I know I would see this thing repeatedly for the next 4 years.
yeah,
I allude to it all the time. Corey and I have talked about it a lot. How we became friends during the Taken King, and I truly did love the Taken King. I think the Dreadnought is still one of the coolest spaces ever made.
mm-hmm.
But just Destiny didn't have the cadence of updates to keep me in, and I really do credit
Right,
the season passes with why I've stuck around with Destiny for as long as I have. Not just
right.
getting now I'm getting an ongoing story, but I was getting new loot every couple months. I was getting missions to do. After I was down real bad after Vanilla D2, and especially after Curse of Osiris, I was like, oh man, this is just
Mm-hmm.
so bad. I
Yeah,
played a lot of Warmind that summer, doing Moments of Triumph with my buddies, and yeah. But I mean, when I saw that trailer at E3 summer 2017, 2017, 2018, I guess it was 2018, E3 2018. Um, it was during the Sony conference when I saw
mm-hmm.
Cade's death, and I was like, "What the fuck have I been missing?" Because I hadn't dipped my feet into Warmind just yet. Warmind had come out maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks beforehand, and they
Mm-hmm.
laid the seeds in that for this, with the Uldren lore that you would find. I was just like, "Oh
Yeah,
my god, there's no way they're actually gonna kill Cade. They're gonna pull a fast one on
yeah,
us."
yeah. I remember that whole thing. The whole thing was like, did they really kill Cade? And we were
Yeah,
like, the whole speculation was like, this is just some sort of like
it's
vision
a
or
marketing
nightmare.
stunt.
Yeah, or like some sort of like vision or something that somebody has, and you have to prevent it or something,
Yeah.
right? And no,
Well, and then there was
they
that speculation after we saw the Vidoc and we saw what they were planning for seasons and stuff, for Shadowkeep with the seasons, and one of them was like, save a hero in time or something, and we were all like, "Oh my god, we're gonna prevent Cade's death! We're gonna bring the curse of the Dreaming City! Oh, this is gonna be so cool!" And then, what the fuck is Saint 14 doing here? Why are we saving
right,
Saint? We can go save Cade. And it was like, and
right,
like they kind of addressed that. And they're like, no, you can't. You'll screw up the timeline. Like,
right.
oh no!
But we
Now I've,
already
I've
screwed it
I've
up.
accepted it now, because I would not be back in Destiny if it was not for Cade's death. And I think that's the same for a lot of the player base. That was the
Yeah,
moment that kind of like rallied the community. Here's the one NPC we had a connection with, and they just offed him. They straight up
right.
offed him.
Yeah.
Oh
I
man,
mean, looking back at it now, though, that was probably like one of the best things they probably could have done to help us build
it's the best
relationships.
decision they've ever made in franchise history.
Yeah. I mean,
Was
we all
killing
hated
Cade
it at
first.
first, but like,
It hurt. Oh, it still hurts. It still
yeah,
hurts thinking about it.
yeah,
But
especially if you play as a hunter, right? Because like that
oh
was,
yeah,
I mean, I was a Titan. I didn't really care. Like, I mean, I liked Cade, especially like the Taken King storyline and stuff was cool, but like, I didn't have that relationship with Cade that a lot of, especially people who play as hunters do, right? Like,
well, I mean, you look at the collective trauma of the hunters, right? We lost Cade. Eris doesn't have her light. Anna doesn't want to be the Vanguard.
mhm,
She's too busy hanging out with her robot sister now, and we just kind of left that plot line hanging out there and trying to
right,
save her laptop. Like,
right.
man, we're down bad over here, okay? And then, oh, we finally get a guy who's worthy of being the Vanguard, and it's fucking Uldren.
Shahan.
Fucking Shah Han. Yeah, Aztecross shows up to save us. And then we get Uldren on top of that. And it's just like, God damn it. This is not what I meant when I said I wanted a new Vanguard. Shiro Forest just chilling there at Fellwinter's Peak, man. He's been hanging out for like 5 years waiting for a phone call. Because nobody's called
Somebody's
him.
gonna
Nobody's
watch over
called
the Iron Temple,
Ephrodite.
man.
Nobody's called him or Ephrodite. Like, come on, guys. This is so easy.
Yeah, where is Ephrodite, by the way? Do
You
we
know
know?
what? We might have to do like unsolved mysteries one week when we have a really slow TWAB or something. I might have to
Yeah.
do like towards the end of the season. I might have to do like unsolved questions of lore and
Right.
just baselessly speculate on where some of these characters are.
Yeah.
So, Corey, just get us out of here. I'm upset now. I'm upset. It's no longer a good memory. Get me out of here.
All right. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of Tower Casuals. Remember, if you listen on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating or review. Maybe we'll read some of them over episode 100, Josh. It's just a mere,
Yeah.
4 weeks away?
4 episodes. This is episode 96. Episode 100 will happen on July the 7th on Bungie Day. We will be recording.
Maybe we'll do a live episode.
I am trying to get some of our friends together, trying to get the LFG together for
Yeah.
a star-studded affair, you could say.
Yeah.
Try and get some of the old crew that we haven't seen here in a little while together. But please give us some of your favorite memories of Destiny over the years, all the way from the announcement. God, I can probably talk back to when we had the first concept art leak out back in like 2012.
Yeah.
The rumors of it, the Easter egg in ODST, you
right.
know.
The walker on the walker in the snow with the vandal walking next to it.
The E3 demo that famously did not work, and they actually had to play it live.
Yeah.
That, God, just some of the stories around there. Like, send us some of your favorite Destiny and Bungie memories. We'll read some of them on air for episode 1. Who am I kidding? We'll read all of them for episode 100.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a live show that day. Like maybe we'll get the old Twitch account re-rolling and do a live show.
Yeah, Corey and I will plan it out. We'll have some more definitive plans for you guys next week. I do want to do some special stuff for episode 100. I may even have a giveaway to do.
Giveaway.
Yeah, I may have some things laying around to do as a giveaway. If the Bungie store shipped any quicker, then we could do more giveaways. But that's beside the point.
Oh man!
As always, you guys can find me at Josh_Finn, 2 N's on Twitter. I'll be talking a lot about the Xbox Bethesda showcase on Sunday.
Yeah,
and I think Corey and I are going to do a show on the Boss Rush Games channel that night.
Yeah. Well,
recapping everything.
Yeah.
And if I'm on any other
90
streams,
minutes.
If I'm on any other streams, I'll let you guys know. But we have a lot to talk about between that and then there's the extended showcase next Tuesday that I'm very excited for.
Right.
Need some of those Todd Howard game demos.
Yeah. Bring gameplay or you're fired, says Phil Spencer.
That's basically what he said.
You can find me at I am Corey HG on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to follow my other podcasts, you can. The Boss Rush Podcast and Nintendo Power Block. You can check those out. That's it. You can follow us on Twitter at Tower Casuals and Instagram and all the other places. I want to thank everybody for watching and or listening to this episode. And until next time, we love you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.